Have you ever felt that you could achieve anything in life that you wanted, that you could achieve all of the goals that you set out for yourself, if only you could get some willpower whenever you needed it the most? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is a way where you can conjure up willpower at will. Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to the 5th episode of Weekend Reads, and the book that we are covering is again The Power of Habit, and today we will discuss an amazing and often elusive concept of willpower. What is willpower? How do you get it? How do you harness it? And is there a way that we can protect it and call upon it whenever we need it? The first thing we're going to look at is willpower and how it works. For a very long time in our history, willpower was considered to be a skill, that you have to be skilled at using willpower. But then there was this idea that, okay, if willpower is a skill, then why is it that on some days I have more willpower and on other days I do not have? So with this idea, there was a scientist who decided to conduct an experiment, and he theorized that willpower might not be a skill but might actually function like a muscle. So he decided to put his theory to the test, and he created an experiment where there were two groups of people who were given, each group was given one set of raw vegetables and one set of delicious chocolate cookies. Now one group, we'll call that group A, was told that you have to ignore the vegetables and you have to eat the cookies. Group B was told that you have to ignore the delicious chocolate cookies and you will have to eat the raw vegetables, radishes and something like that. Now, of course, the group that had to eat chocolates and ignore the raw vegetables, they found it very easy to do so, while the other group that had to ignore the chocolate cookies, the temptation of nice, delicious chocolate cookies, and eat the radishes, it took a bit of discipline and willpower in order to avoid eating those chocolate cookies. Now, after a while, both sets of groups were given an unsolvable puzzle, and they were trying to see how long will each group spend before they gave up. And their notice was that group A, which was told to ignore the vegetables, they spent 60% more time in trying to solve that unsolvable puzzle than group B. And towards the end of it, the people in group B, they were really agitated and frustrated, and they just wanted to get out of there. And what they learned was that because group B had to use more willpower in ignoring the chocolate cookies, by the time they got to the unsolvable puzzle, they did not have a lot of willpower left to continue with it. Whereas group A, which did not consume their willpower resources in the first part of the experiment, because ignoring raw vegetables is not really that hard, they had higher reserves of willpower available to them when they were trying to do the unsolvable puzzle, and that is why they spent a lot more time in trying to resolve that puzzle. And so we've established on some grounds, okay, that willpower functions like a muscle, right? Which means that willpower will also get tired. And that is the reason why sometimes, some days we have higher levels of motivation, higher levels of willpower, other days we do not. And if we dissect our days, we might learn that maybe during the day we had done some tasks that we otherwise did not want to do, and we had to use willpower in trying to stay on the course. So by the end of the day, we were left with very little willpower. Speaking from my own experience, the problems I face is sometimes, I have higher energy in going to work out after I come back from office, while on other days I feel like that I do not have any energy left to work out. And now when I was reading this chapter, I was evaluating my experience as well, and I realized most of the time when I do not have a lot of energy left to work out after office, is that it's because that during the day I had done some tasks that was tedious and that took a lot of self-discipline and that took a lot of my willpower in order to ensure that I got that task done. So by the end of the day, I had very little willpower left to push myself to go out and work. So now we have established that in some ways, willpower functions like an actual muscle. If the resources of willpower do get depleted, how do we ensure that we protect our willpower resources so that they don't get used up very quickly? And for that, we will look at another experiment, which was done on individuals who were around 70, 78 years of age, and these are people who had recently undergone a hip replacement surgery. Now, post-surgery, they were required to undergo a physical rehabilitation program to ensure that no scarring would happen, and during this rehabilitation program, they were required to do regular movement, regular exercise. This was going to be extremely painful, and there was high chances that a lot of people would not follow through with their rehab program. So when these people were given out their training manuals that they had to follow, each individual within the group was also given few sheets of blank paper, so that on which they had to write down what weekly goals they will be achieving for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And what they saw after a few weeks, that people who had actually written down their goals, what they were going to do during the week, they had higher recovery rates as compared to those individuals who had not used those sheets and they had not written down their goals. And what they realized was that each individual had created a routine, a habit around those points where the pain was going to be extremely high. In other words, it would take a lot of willpower to continue into doing that exercise. For example, one individual who had said that he was going to go to the washroom without taking any assistance from anybody else. He said that when he got up from his bed or from his sofa, it was extremely painful. So he had written down a routine that as soon as I get up, I have to take my next step. So that was going to cut down the temptation of sitting back down. And that was how he had built this idea that when the pain was going to be extremely high when he was getting up, he'll immediately take the next step, which was going to be his routine. And then that would lead to the reward that he had planned for himself, that he was going to go and reach the washroom without any assistance from anybody else. And that is how you save willpower. But if willpower does function like a muscle, there surely must be ways where you can strengthen your willpower reserves. And for that, we have to take a trip down memory lane. When we go back to our school days, there is a focus on not just academic, but also on extracurricular activities, right? Sports and theater and drama and debates, all of these activities besides your education. Why do they do that? The reason they do that is because they realize in these activities, you are building up mechanisms of self-discipline. You're inculcating the ability to self-discipline, the ability to manage one time, and the ability to essentially use willpower whenever you need it effectively. So if a kid has to study, he also has to participate in a couple of extracurricular activities. He has to manage his time accordingly so that he can do all of those things effectively. So in doing these extracurricular activities, let's say he's performing in a play, or let's say he's playing a particular organized sport, he has to follow certain rules. He has to perform certain activities within certain times, and that is forcing that child to do something that he might otherwise not want to do, and that is essentially building their self-disciplining abilities, where they're able to monitor and discipline themselves, and essentially they are able to strengthen their willpower muscle. And if we understand willpower in this way, it really makes sense as to why students who participate in extracurricular activities also have a higher chance of being, academically very strong, because they can translate the things that they learn on the field into the classroom as well. And so in this chapter, we have seen is that willpower is not a skill. Willpower is a muscle. We can build it, we can harness it, and we can use it, we can call upon it whenever we want it. I hope in this episode you've learned some things that will help you achieve the goals, and now you can go out there and accomplish anything that you want to, because now you will be able to conjure up willpower whenever you want. Stay tuned for more. For now, Allah Hafiz.